replacing the bottom bracket on Redman's bike. Bottom bracket's all jiggly. It's an old Octolink. Bottom bracket internally threaded, which is fairly simple to replace. On a wheel magnet stuck to the derailleur. I'll have to find out where that goes. That sucker was on there. These days I'll clean up my work area. Got to pull any washers you have out, so when you use the crank tool, you don't jam the whole system. Now we need a crank puller, which I do have around here. It's probably buried. Okay, hopefully this shows. You need a plug like this, because this tool here is made for a square taper bottom bracket. But with this adapter, you stick it in there, and you can use the same crank puller. This has been on here a very long time, so a lot of times I got to break out a hammer. Nope, this one is good. See, it's a spline surface. Hopefully that shows up. If not, with the powers of editing, I'll probably just cut it right out. A little tighter. Now the bottom bracket tool. Should, how loose that thing is. Tighten it up and still see if it jiggles. Oh yeah, that's the bearings. Oh, now they're tightened it. I don't know if this is going to show up on the camera. It would still be rideable, but in time it's just going to get looser and looser. Okay, here's the new one. There's the old one. Bam, it looks like I got the right stuff. Because I don't always. Here's the new cup. Hopefully I can get the other cup off. Yeah, you use a tool like that. They do have socket versions that go over the whole thing, and I do have one somewhere. This isn't even the perfect tool or the properly fitting tool for the job, but it's in my hand, and it's working. But when I go to retorque it, I will find a better tool. There we go. That way I don't mar it up and kill it. But for taking the old one out, sure. I'll use the junky tool. See the Sagino tool. This is from an old bottom bracket type tool, and once I get it in there, of course it was a lot easier when it was on the bike. See, it doesn't fit properly. It only hooks the two edges instead of all of them. But I was fortunate because it was loose in the bike. So now I need to locate the right tool. See, now I've got a much better tool, and it won't mar over the edges or anything like that. In theory, I'm sure I can still screw it up. No matter how good of a mechanic you think you are, shit happens. You always clean out your bottom bracket. There's always crud in there. I mean, if you didn't, it's not the end of the world. It would go together and you ride. It would just, in the future, screw up your threads for future repairs. I mean, technically, you could chase the threads out if you had a big tap, which I do. But I have never found the need to do that if the threads are actually good. There's a lot of caked up crud in there. So I'm going to just clean up what I can. This bike's probably from the 90s or early 2000s. So it's got a lot of years on it. And I'm being careful to not, scar the threads. That wouldn't be the end of the world. But not when you have the stuff to fix it. See all that crud in there? Back to my favorite. Simple green, foaming degreaser. This should help me get that cleaned up. Alright, this should be good enough, at least for my standards. And watched a lot of YouTube videos and watched other mechanics put bottom brackets, and they way over grease. You really just need it on the threads, like a fingerful. Because to have it all packed in the middle here does nothing. It's a sealed cartridge bearing, so I just make sure the threads are covered. Because as you thread it in, it's going to push all the threads up, and I always make sure they have grease on the lip, because that's where your creaking comes from. That's where both sides of the bottom bracket, that's where this edge sits. And when the frame is flexing, that's where the noise is. But yeah, I've watched way too many people really just over grease things. They do the same thing with hubs, when, especially when people try to grease their own hubs. They'll put so much grease that it's all the way in the center of the axle. No need for that. You just need it in the bearings, not everywhere else. So on the non-drive side cup, there's already grease on the threads. And if you look, you can see this white layer. It's kind of like, it's almost like a Teflon tape, but it's just like it helps to keep it creak-free and from binding loose. And on the inside, they have like this nylon ring in here also to keep the creaking down. This sits against this part here. That way when you're flexing it, you get less noise. So I don't really over grease the insides there. I just get the inside and make it moist. I essentially do the same thing to this surface. No need to over grease because it's already been taken care of. At this stage, it's more of a water barrier because stuff does get into your frame, even though you can't see any holes in it. That's how it just happens. And I just need a little bit more grease for the threads over here. Since there's grease on the threads itself, and when it threads in, it's going to work its way into these threads. But I just moisten up all the threads. Easier installation and for proper torque. But looking at this frame, you can see where the alloy frame kind of crushed in a little through the years. So we'll see how that affects. How that affects the torque and how it compresses against the frame. There we go. I always lock down the drive side first. The drive side, or the drivetrain side of the bottom bracket is a counterclockwise, so it's left tight. And then the non-drive side is standard right tight, left loose. I'm pretty sure the torque specs don't hold me to it. Look it up before you do it. But it's something like 45 Newton meters. It's up there pretty high. I don't have a torque wrench for that high, so I just get a I just get a nice breaker bar, big ratchet, and I really just lock it down good. And see, I'm kind of holding the vise stable as I do it. Alright, there we go. Trying to hold it in as I torque it. Okay. Good. Pick up some tools. This tool is fantastic because it uses standard Park set wrench, 36 millimeter. It's the old school 90s headset wrench style, which is nice because almost every mechanic has them. Well, any mechanic who's been a mechanic for 20, 30 years has. And since the drive side is all tight, the left side will go in firm. It's a combo of if these threads here aren't exactly perfect, the bottom bracket could be shifted, and it's got the nylon inner part that's creating drag, and it's got the nylock or the Teflon type of coating on the threads. So it'll seem tight going in, but that's okay. That's how it's supposed to be. And basically you just lock this side down. Now I'm not going to do it 100% tight yet. I'm going to do it till I'm about a millimeter in, and then I'm going to recheck the tightness of this. Remember where I put the tool. Okay, it's definitely tight. Now I know when I lock down this side, it should all be set to go. Because if you didn't tighten this all the way in, you tighten this one, sometimes it's hard to get this all the way in. It'll sit too far away from the bottom bracket. That's if the bottom bracket itself is either squished in or not made to the proper specs. And it happens. Sometimes you got to use bottom bracket washers, like 1 millimeter, half a millimeter, just to compensate. Or do what True It does, and they give you a rubber O-ring to go behind the cup. Which, as long as it's all tight, I have no issues with. It just looks funny. Okay. Now here's where a lot of your creaking actually happens on bottom brackets, is on the actual splines. Right up in here. So I always grease the splines. There, I'll grease kind of liberally. And make sure I get it into each spline. And I'll also do the threads. So I put a little blob there. And there's a flat section where the crank sits, so you always make sure to get that too. This might be one of the places where I actually over grease, only because these cranks are famous for creaking. And it's an older crank, and the splines are a little on the worn side. If Shimano was smart, they would make all the replacement bottom brackets. They make all the splines a little bigger to compensate, but it is an old bike. But my buddy Redman does put a lot of miles on this, or at least he has in the past. Okay. Now it's time to clean that out. Getting all the stuff out of the splines. The good thing about the splines is if you clean out all the way around it, you don't necessarily have to get into the splines, because as you press it onto the crank, it'll usually push the rest of the prep through. But I always get in there and just kind of do a quick cleaning through, pull the rag through, and that usually does a pretty fair job. And I'll just take my little screwdriver and just get any of the big chunks of dirt out. I won't get too crazy in making it perfect. It's because without like an ultrasonic cleaner, little tiny toothbrushes, you're just not going to get it perfect. But some foaming degreaser, a rag, and a little screwdriver tip, I can get it 80%, 90% good. And for a 2000 something bike, that's good. Newer cranks are a lot easier because they don't have the multiple splines like this. It's a lot easier to get to the splines. A little bit of sawing action. There's the trick. Full start. All nice and clean in there. This side, that's where your crank bolt goes. Yeah, there's a washer that sits there. Usually use my fingernails for that. Oh yeah, there you go. Vanish the knot. Cleaning your fingernails, or cutting your fingernails. A little bit of grease in here. I don't worry about getting it in the splines. I just put it on the flat surface because when you press it in, it'll force through into this side. And when that happens, I just put the washer right on top of the grease. You have to rotate it so you feel it pop in. There you go. This one's a lot more grimy. Okay, just clean the threads here. I like to make sure there's grease on the flat surface there. That's going to go between the flat surface and the washer, and then the washer here up against the grease inside the crank, and that should keep it nice and quiet for quite a while. A lot of guys will just put the washer in and only grease on the crank side. It works. It's just I've learned it's the flat surfaces of a bolt that creak, and not necessarily the threads. And you don't necessarily need to pile grease on top of the washer, because as the threads screw in, the grease is actually going to come right to it. The great thing about all these octolinks is you just tighten them until they stop. There's no, I'm sure there is a torque setting, but it's, you just go to your bottom out. And a lot of the old press fit spline stuff was like that, which is, from a mechanic standpoint, is fantastic. Because the old square tapers, if you over torqued them, your chain line would be off, and you'd pretty much, you didn't ruin them, but you prematurely wore them out. I'll always make sure there's some on the flat. Washer. Boom. I like to put the chain on it, on the dry side, and I'll show you why. I can hold this when I'm tightening, and I can just rotate the tire instead of sitting there like this. It doesn't work for the non-dry because the bolt goes the other direction. And I just go till it stops and then give it a good yank, like right there. Stopped, and you get a lot of leverage holding the wheel like this. Bam. This side doesn't work. See, when you tighten it, it freewheels backwards. So this you got to do old school. Oh, okay. That's the stuff that hurts your back. Alright, that's what he wanted me to do, but let me give it a quick check over. He had this to me 2 months ago, a month ago, probably 2 months ago. RSX shifting and Tiagra components. People may think of those as the shittier of the Shimano stuff, but then super reliable for this guy. Alright, foot brakes tight, centered. No jiggles in the wheels. Wheels are maybe not perfectly true. The front one is. I won't say perfectly, but I'll say a lot straighter than the back, which is usually how it goes since all your weight is back here. Yep, there it is on the ground. Slope wrench. Bladed spokes. Always a pain in the butt. because you always got to retwist the blade to get it reoriented. So sometimes you got to go back and forth a few times just to get the right tension. Giving all the spokes a squeeze, make sure there's no jiggly ones. Headset's good. Once I get it on the ground, I'll be able to tell more. Alright, time for a test ride. Right off the bat, front derailleur needs adjusted, and the seat is really creaking. All right. Still a little slidey. Give that a whirl. Here's the seat now too. He's got a piece of tape here, which makes life simple for me. A lot of people will use grease. You can see where it's all dry. And the seat's still tight enough for me to do this without falling off. Okay. I'm just going to use some. I always use chain lube there. It seems to work well. You could take grease, smear it on the inside, smear it here, put it in, wipe it down, but it collects too much. And hopefully you can see that it's kind of all corroded there. And always check behind your collar, because it's another great creaking place. You can kind of see where there's some paint in there. Hopefully it shows up. There. Put the load on the post. And whatever runoff I have will go inside the frame. I do feel some grit in there, so I'm going to get in there with a rag and a wooden dowel. Put all this where it won't attract any sand. Right underneath the camera. When it falls on the ground, I'll have to wipe it all up and go from there. Boom. I'm looking for, it's just for a big flag. It's a flag pole. So it'll help me get down and in there. Still a little better than it was. grease all the way down. Usually, I reach my finger down past the welds because it's all up on top here where all the flex really is. Because once the seat post is down into the frame, there's no real flex to be, well, flex is minimized, I should say. If I can only find where I put my Allen wrenches down. There. Oh, this and where my finger is here and here, that's another creak point. I'm just going to unscrew it, put a little grease behind the head here, some oil, and this should slide out with my fingers, but it's not. So I'm going to actually tap it out, clean it, put some oil in there, and that should help with the grease. I mean, that should help with any creaking. Just going to wipe it down with some oily fingers. See, now it just pops in and out, no problem. That I'm going to get inside here. So it's underneath the head, and of course a little on the threads. And after we're done with this, we'll go ahead and I'll take care of that. But I'll loosen these, and I'll just probably get some spray lube in there and in along the seat mounts, because that's where they're famous for creaking also. I've done whole jobs where people kept telling me it's the bottom bracket creaking, the bottom bracket creaking. Go through the whole bottom bracket system, re-grease everything. Come to find out, it's a seat. There we go. No more jiggly on the tool bag clip. Yeah, it slides in way better. You can see it's a little grease mark, which, ta-da! And he had a piece of tape there, and you can see how it's all peeled up, which means it was sliding on him at one time. So I will just compensate and bring it up a little, about a millimeter, maybe 2. Okay. Get the seat straight, and once it's on the ground, I'll be able to check that better. But for now, this will suffice. Now, get in there. There we go. That's not making any creaking noises, as where when I undid the front one, it did. So that tells me that I should be able to get away with 3/4 of the way out, spray it down, Put it back together. See what happens. I'm going to get in it from the top. From the bottom. I want that stuff to penetrate in there. And I'm also going to slide the pin I want to spray inside the top seat, pin, bolt, nut. I'm just going to work that back and forth and let that get in there. Jiggling it back and forth. And when it's tightened, it should be a fully creak-free. And I'm also got inside here where the seat rails sit. Banner spray lube gets everywhere. You can use grease. You take it apart, you put a little dab of grease everywhere, squeeze it all together. And that's how I did it for years and years and years. But I learned something from being a bike mechanic since 1990. That oil kind of accomplishes the same thing, because oil goes on, it goes on thin, grease goes on thick, and it's usually hard to clean up. And they both accomplish the same thing. They help it from corroding in that area, and the corrosion or the dryness of beginning corrosion will make it start to creak. Would I use oil to put like a bottom bracket in? If it was a thick enough oil, I can get away with it for a while. I know on my personal bikes I have. It wouldn't be an issue on my personal bikes, but a customer's bike, I'd want something thicker. Okay. Tight. All right, let's put it on the ground, see if it still creaks. Yay, no more creak. Nice. Let's check the handlebars. Okay. Headset. Check the pedals for creaks, because any of these look style pedals, they're famous for it. These look like Shimano look style. Plastic clip tape. Yeah, the plastic cleat kick plate. Famous for making noises on those things. Bam! Back in business, no noise. You should be a happy camper. Everything is functioning properly.